Okay, so the purpose of all of these videos is to share with you what does the practice of working on myself look like. Um, so I've exposed myself to a lot of therapeutic approaches out there. I was in therapy for a long time with various therapists. And at a certain point while making my documentary, I asked myself, is there a way to summarize on an internal level in the language of not the intellect, but the language of the inner world? Um, is there a way to summarize an approach? And I was trying to not intellectually figure this out, because that's the language of the books. And I just decided to live with the question for a while. I don't know how long a while is, a month or two. Eventually, I did get an image. And the image is, I guess the question itself was, I know what got me to this place of internal chaos over the years, and it's all of these different social factors that are out there. And I understood, yes, I'm a mammal, and if you disrupt a child's development like I have been disrupted, if a child is hurt, they're gonna be hurting and in a chaotic state. And there's one word out there which I really like, which is emotional dysregulation. Now, it's more than emotional dysregulation. It's intellect. I noticed that my thoughts go very chaotic, and even fantasies get messed up. Spirituality, connection to the world, not being in the body. So all of this chaos or dysregulation, I know what got me here to that state. But the question is, what would be the ideal state? What did I need to have in order to be well? And the answer came in an image, and the image is of an adult with a child. The child, say 3 years old. That's the image that came to me. And the adult doesn't necessarily have to be a mom or a dad. But the two qualities that I identified them as having is a sense of presence, meaning they're with the child as opposed to being distracted, either with an object like a phone or with their own worries. So for them, the sense of presence is like, yes, I am with this kid, and I'm dedicating my presence to this kid. And the other quality is that they care about this child, love, compassion, whatever you want to call it. And I imagined this kid who felt secure in the presence of this adult, on an intuitive level, knowing that yes, they have their back, and they care about them. And this child then goes on and plays with other kids. And as it happens, kids do stuff to each other. And I imagine the kid coming back crying. And the question is, how does the adult soothe the kid? How do they comfort them? And it became very obvious to me that they would hug them or give them a sense of presence. I can imagine a child being so upset they might not necessarily want to be hugged, or maybe they do. But those two qualities of sense of presence and care is what helps the kid calm down in a natural way. And it became obvious also to me that if the child is crying, that the adult is not going to ask them what went wrong. Maybe a 3-year-old or 2 cannot even express. But I imagine a 10-year-old then, who can express, the adult is not going to ask them what went wrong if they're still crying. So that's where it became obvious to me that all that I've learned and managed to understand on an intellectual level, I actually don't have access to them when I am upset. When I'm triggered, all of that I've learned, I simply don't have access to it. I'm so disrupted. And following with all of this, I started to think about the education system. The education system is designed so you have a large number of children in a class, and even later on as higher education. Education itself, the way it has developed over the years, at least the last 100 years, is trying to standardize a way of teaching. But it's all based on intellectual passing on of knowledge. And there are a lot of practical factors to consider. Even if we know today that children needs to be hugged, resources, how much this cost comes into being. But at least it helped me recognize that what I needed is an adult all along. And in the process of trying to work on myself, in the process of trying to get to know the field of psychology, it explained my difficulties with the education system, with third level of it explained my difficulty with the books written by psychological experts, psychologists, psychiatrists, and others. And it explained why I found, first of all, the language so alienating, because it's written by intellectuals for other intellectuals. They're not really writing from that inner place of the child being disrupted. Because really in that state, it isn't about language. So one of the best summaries about the limits of education I got from a jazz lesson, from Tim Lurch, a jazz guitarist who is also a Buddhist. He said, education is limited by what is teachable. So something to that effect. There are some things that are very difficult to teach. And we know when it comes to music, for example, that you can describe techniques, but to play from your heart is a different matter. And we can all understand this on an intuitive level. So it clarified for me that all the books out there, and there's a lot of books which I would not consider as, healthy or whatever, but let's say the best books are still going to be generalizing, and it's still going to be limited by language itself. So that's the image I have, and it's an image rather than a detailed psychological approach that I'm describing through language. And those two qualities, a sense of presence and a sense of compassion, they're kind of symbols for what it is that I need to give myself. And following from there, identifying just those two qualities, I also looked at the various therapeutic approaches. Sorry, it's not the therapeutic approach. Well, I started to think about the various therapists that I was with personally. And I realized, yes, the good therapists that I was with had those two qualities. And I had a sense of them being present with me rather than distracted, or rather than caught up in a psychological approach that they're trying to apply. And a sense that I'm cared for, that they care about me as a human being. And those two qualities over time, I internalized. Whatever dynamic was going on in the therapeutic setting, over time I absorbed that intuitively, and I started to apply them on myself. And again, I took this further and asked myself, well, what can I share? How does it look like, the practice? And I ended up with time thinking of 5 different areas. One is intellect, the second one is emotions, not necessarily in that order. Intellect, emotions, the unconscious, spirituality, not religion, spirituality, and the body. All of these that I've named live in the body. So I'm hoping to share with you what does the practice look like in each one of these areas. The application of a sense of presence is really about an awareness of what's going on internally, and take a caring attitude to myself rather than a regimental or shaming myself why I'm not doing well. Now, having said all of this, I'm boiling it down to a picture, an image, and also to two qualities, and it looks very simple. And when I think about it, the last 40 years of working with myself, yes, it's as simple as those two qualities being applied, but simple does not mean it's easy. It's actually very messy, very difficult. It's a direction, but it's very difficult to describe in words, and whatever I'm trying works sometimes, doesn't work other times. And even the concept of identifying that what I needed was a parent that was present, and I didn't get that, that itself can be triggering. That in itself can evoke a sense of pain of all the time that I didn't get those. So it is simple in many ways, but the application is very difficult.